Hello, welcome back to MoSMB Cluster installation demo. In the first part, we saw how to install the MoSMB CL package and its dependencies along with the Zookeeper cluster installation and its configuration. Now we'll proceed with the MoSMB configurations. MoSMB configurations can be divided into further three parts. One is networking and settings, which covers the domain join related part. Second is cluster keytab configuration, and third is the MoSMB configuration. In this video, we will be seeing how to configure the MoSMB CL build for single domain cluster. Now for single domain cluster, the prerequisites are that the networking settings are carried out, which covers the domain join related settings. One can go through the domain join related settings in the network settings video. And now we'll proceed with the kerberos keytab related settings. Now there are two ways in which one can create a cluster keytab. One is the kerberos keytab method, and alternative for that is using the CIFS ticket. So in this demo we'll be seeing using how to use the CIFS ticket for the keytab generation. So first step is that we need to go to the Active Directory machine and create one user, which is a dedicated user for CIFS ticket generation. So we go to Active Directory users and computers. Under that, we create a new user and give the user's logon name and enter password. We also set that this password never expires. So we'll go to log into our Active Directory machine. In the Active Directory Administrative Center, we can create a new user. Here we will enter the name as CIFS user. We'll set the UPN logon name to CIFS user. Enter the password. And here we'll select the password never expires option. So as mentioned that for CentOS 8 machines, to enable the encryption options, which are AES 128-bit encryption and the AES 256-bit encryption. So we'll be enabling those options for this user. So under encryption options, in other encryption options, we can set this account supports to AES 128-bit encryption and AES 256-bit encryption. And we need this user to be part of the administrators group. We need this user to be a part of domain admins group. Click OK. We'll click OK to apply the settings, and as we can see that this user is now created. Now for the next step we will follow is we'll start the PowerShell in administrative prompt, and then we will run this keytab command to create the cluster keytab. Let's start the PowerShell in administrative privileges. I need to run keytab command. In this we provide our cluster name, which is mosmb_cluster.rucycloud.tom. rucycloud.tom is our AD name. Then we provide the password and we map our currently created user, which was MoCIFS user, with this ticket. We set the crypto to all, and we are going to write this keytab file in C directory with the name MoSMB Cluster key.keytab. As we can see that we have successfully mapped CIFS MoSMB cluster rucycloud.tom name with our MoSMB CIFS user, and the key tab has been generated. Once the key tab is generated, we have to copy this generated key tab to our MoSMB servers. On our MoSMB servers, we have copied the created keytab file, which is MoSMB cluster key.keytab. This file is copied on both our MoSMB servers, which are going to be in the cluster. The next step is that to add the CIFS key to the krb5 keytab file using ktutil utility. To do that, we will just run ktutil utility and we'll read the file and we'll write it into etc krb5 keytab file. For ktutil command to work on CentOS, we need krb5 workstation installed, and on Ubuntu servers we need krb5 users to be installed. As we already have ktutil utility, so we won't be installing that package here. What we do is read our created keytab file and write it into etc krb5 keytab. Similar steps will follow on the other MoSMB server node. Next step is to verify if the CIFS entries are added in the keytab, and to verify we run the command klist-key. Now as we can see here that our CIFS keytab entries are added, etc krb5 keytab file. Similarly, on node 2, you can see that this CIFS ticket for MoSMB cluster keytab have been added. Now what we have to do is generate a CIFS ticket on the MoSMB server side with k in it and mentioning the CIFS keytab entry which we just added, and then we give the password of the CIFS user with which we had created this keytab. We can verify this ticket with keylist-a, which gives us that CIFS ticket is present. Similarly, we will generate the ticket on another node with kinit command. And verify this with keylist-e command. Here we can see we have a CIFS ticket present on our machine. Now before starting this MoSMB server, we'll check for the single domain cluster setup configuration. So as we have already added CIFS ticket keytab on all the MoSMB server nodes, we'll now be ensuring that our DNS configurations are in place with respect to our MoSMB IP and the cluster name which we have mentioned in the CIFS keytab. Similar to the following example, so we will just go to our DNS manager, and here we will add an entry, new host, and as we can see on the server side, we had mentioned the host name, cluster name as MoSMB_cluster.ocloud.com. So we will be mapping this host name with the IPs of our MoSMB server, which are 10.10.0.123 and 10.10.0.125. MoSMB_cluster mapped with 10.10.0.123. Similarly, MoSMB_cluster mapped with 10.10.0.125. And we'll just refresh this page, and here we can see that MoSMB cluster entries against those respective IPs have been made. We can carry out the required authorization settings, which is POSIX ACLs or NT-ACLs. In this demo, we'll see how to configure the POSIX ACLs. Then we have to carry out the Zookeeper server settings, which we have covered in previous demo. And then we carry out the MoSMB configuration related settings for our share path and persistent store section, as well as the node ID section. Then we can start using the MoSMB in the cluster mode. So we'll go through the verification of these kerberos configuration files first, and then we'll proceed with the POSIX ACL settings in the MoSMB configuration. So as we know that we need to set the default realm and ticket cache settings in the kerberos config file, we will carry out those settings first on our server machines. So we'll go to the krb5conf file, Here we have already mentioned that default run is rusicloud.com, and we will change the default cache name and the type to file type caching. So we'll comment this first section. We'll mention the OPT MoSMB location, under which we'll say Git. Under realm section, we will add a rusicloud entry similar to the example given above. Our KDC is rusicloud.com. Same with admin server. Under the domain names, we will add the examples similar to given above. And save this file. And as we have this directory included, etc kerberos, we will make sure there are no other files which affect our current configuration changes which we made. Like this default KCM cache related file, so that our generated ticket does not go under the KCM manager cache type. We will comment this line out. We'll make similar changes on another MoSMB server node. Start with the default caching parameter, file type, opt MoSMB, add the realms, admin server entry, and the entries in domain realm section. And save this file as well. And similarly, we have kerberos.t KCM default cache entry. So we'll comment this out so that our generated tickets are under the KCM direct under the file cache type. Next step is to check the configuration for the open ldap related settings for the base and host or URI related settings. So we'll open this file, ldap This we will configure the base and base as this cloud and the host name as UAD dot which is the host name of our AD machine. Save this. Similar changes will carry out on another MoSMB node. Base entry. And post entry. Now check the SSSD configuration. We do have SSSD configuration in place for rusicloud.com, which is our AD. We have ldap ID mapping set to true and use fully qualified names set to true. I will just check this if SSSD service is running. It is active and running, and we'll check if we can map the domain users to our server. So we had recently created move CIFS user, which was part of the domain admins group. So this is the MoCIFS user and its primary group is set to domain users, and it is also part of the domain admins group. Similarly, on the other server, we'll check SSSD configurations. Here as well, you can see that it is set for the rusicloud domain, which is our domain, and we'll check if this service is running. So you can see that it is in active running state. We'll just check similarly the ID mapping. You can see here that UID and the domain are mapped for the particular user, which is MoSIFS user. Now we have seen that our MoSMB kerberos configuration is in place with respect to the cluster. We'll move on to the MoSMB configurations.